Welcome, all my friends, to the Sweet Spot, where IT leaders share the insight with other leaders and others that want to lead. My name is Carlos Vargas, and as in every week, I have my two co-hosts, Howard Holton and Paul Lewis.
Hey there.
You know, one of these times, Paul, you're going to have to wave when he says my name, and I'll wave when he says your name.
Nice. I have like a sub-second response time between when I can hear Carlos in real and when I can hear him in this.
Oh, yeah, that's funny.
I can anticipate everything Carlos says because I hear it like a microsecond just before.
That's what we have to do when we travel.
All right, I need to tell an anecdote of this week before we get into any meat. So one of the presentations we saw at Google Next in San Francisco was about AlloyDB Omni. Are you familiar, Howard, with AlloyDB? So it's a managed Postgres in cloud, right? Omni is the offline version. So one can download AlloyDB, on premise / at edge. And so they were demonstrating its function, which of course is slightly less function than AlloyDB, which is slightly less function than Oracle, right? As a convenience. Part of the demo was they were showing it running on their laptop, and then they pulled the Ethernet for us to be wowed and amazed that it was still working, even though it wasn't connected to the internet. And the demonstrator was waiting for the applause to occur. And it was just silence in the crowd, because the rest of the people crowd weren't impressed by something running on a laptop that wasn't connected to the internet.
Right.
Like hundreds of other thousands of applications.
Yeah.
And he was like shocked that we weren't impressed by this feature.
Ooh,
like,
does the same thing it did in 2005.
Word, Excel. It was hilarious. So you could tell of the age of the person, right? Because clearly they're born in the cloud, and offline isn't a feature generally. Right. It was just hilarious. It was like eerie silence, as if we were hoping something else was going to occur, because this wasn't the impressive part. It was funny. What they did, their very next demo, was actually interesting, where they were doing synchronous transaction between AlloyDB and Aurora, right outside of the Google ecosystem. And then they turned on the columnar database, and what was a 300 millisecond response time became a 7 millisecond response time.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
Just by turning on the feature. Like, wow, now that's an impressive feature.
Yeah. 300 milliseconds is not real time. 7 milliseconds is real time.
Yeah, between an offline version and Aurora, that's
impressive.
Yeah, like you're squeezing a lot out of that transmission, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I thought that was an interesting anecdote to the week. So
it was funny because the room was full.
Yes, easily 300 people in there, right? It was like clearly, it was clearly meant to impress.
Yeah, that's funny. So you're ending August at Google Next.
Yep.
Right. And then we've got a big event coming up in October.
Yep. Are you allowed to mention it?
Yeah, of course.
Or you don't have IP limitations?
No. So Paul, you and I will be at CIO Symposium by Gartner.
Correct.
Up there in Orlando. And more importantly, I believe we're planning on being at Disney 5 days.
At least, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Plus
it really depends if we want to do a not so scary, right? If we want to do that, then that changes the mix up a bit. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I forgot. It's like not Scaryland or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's Halloween period.
Oh right.
Yeah, not so scary Halloween party at Magic Kingdom.
Right.
But then one of the nights, of course, is the free Universal Studio night, which obviously is a can't miss.
What's the free whatever park? Is it always Universal? I didn't think it was always Universal.
The last 3-4 years has been Universal, but yeah, they've mixed it up before. But it's we won't know what it actually is till we get there. But
right,
yeah, a free for all, food and wine and games and rides, all that fun stuff.
Oh, it's just rides, sir.
plus there's content at the conference, I guess.
Sure.
There's some content.
That's not
somewhere between 10 and 2. I bet there's some content.
So what I'm curious about is I'm sure we have some listeners that will also be at Symposium. It might be interesting to see. We talk a lot about Disney, and I have to say, I think I've got 5 times as many comments on the Disney content that we put in this than I do the tech we put in this.
Nice.
The number of people that have said, "Hey, you guys should just do a Disney only pod," outnumbers those asking for anything else combined.
So you're saying there's very few Gen AI requests?
Very few. There's very few any requests other than Disney. So what I was thinking is, since we're effectively planning on being at Disney for a week of evenings,
Mhm.
I think it might be nice to offer our audience the ability to join us at any one of
Ooh, a
those nights.
meetup.
A meetup at the park, and kind of see what does that experience look like with people that have been to the parks far more than 100 times.
That's a,
Wait,
sadly.
wait. Let's set it up. If you are a leader that want to be with someone that has been at all the parks around the world, make sure that you click the link below so you can be part of our Disney experience with the Sweet Spot.
And that's why Carlos is our producer and we're not.
That's right.
But I think
Fair warning, though, it won't be for the lighthearted, right? Like
it's true. It's true.
It won't be. We won't be moseying through the streets.
No. I'm happy to do a mosey on one of the weekends when we
Sure.
have time to do it, and it might be fun maybe to do one of the full days, because I think we're going to do a front end and back end full day, and do a hunt for the hidden hidden Mickeys or something. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I'm down to do that. But yeah, in the evenings, no. It's you've got time for 3 rides. These are the 3 rides we're attempting to hit.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Now, Epcot, we might want to eat around the world, right? It is the Food and Wine Festival, and that's always a glorious event. So that's always good. But yeah, there will be some key rides that we're going to not only attempt, but we will absolutely do.
Yes. And we'll be watching the Genie app incredibly ravenously, looking for the right opportunity to get in line for the right ride. Like when I did Epcot last time, the 180-minute Ratatouille ride became 10 minutes because no one was getting on the line due to the fireworks show.
Right.
And that was the moment. And by the time we got in the line, and by the time we were halfway through the line was 90 minutes again.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, we hit it perfect. We finished dinner. We're sitting at dinner and I go, it's time to leave. We're going now. And I've
only ever rope dropped Ratatouille. And even then it was 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah. No, 10 minutes. It was great.
Wow.
You didn't even have time to appreciate all the work the Imagineers do to build the experience on the line wait, you know?
That's right. It was just the ride experience at that point. You missed all the goodness.
Yep. And that is by far the best ride at Epcot. Right.
Wow, you haven't been on Cosmic Rewind yet.
Which one is Cosmic Rewind?
That's the new Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh no, I have been on that. I take it back. I forgot that was at Epcot.
That's a pretty.
That is the best.
That is a distinctive ride. Yeah.
That's certainly top 5 for all of the Disney parks, or right. any amusement park ride I've ever been on. It's top 5.
Yeah.
That might be top 3 for all Disney parks.
Interesting. All Disney parks in the world, or all Disney parks Disney World?
All Disney parks that I've been to. So I haven't been to absolutely everywhere, but I would say that that's pretty close to Rise of the Resistance, and Rise of the Resistance is my number 1.
Yeah. The value of Rise is that, not unlike Ratatouille, it has independently run ride systems, right? And the Ratatouille, while the ride itself is appealing from just a design perspective, it's actually the ride system that's the most intellectually appealing, right? So there are autonomous vehicles that coordinate, right?
Just like Mickey and Minnie.
Yeah, exactly like Mickey and Minnie.
Yep.
You even dance with Mickey and Minnie. There's a whole
it's so good
samba exercise.
So good. But Guardians of the Galaxy is almost like what they envisioned Space Mountain to be in the beginning, but we didn't have the technology to do. Right? It's still effectively Space Mountain, but it's Space Mountain in 2023 with Guardians of the Galaxy unique IP.
Right.
And they did it so well. It doesn't, like, Star Tours always feels like an add-on, right? Star Wars feels like, okay, you get to visit the universe, but you're so far away from where any of the action was that you saw.
Right.
You know what I mean? That you're like, oh, I guess this is a real universe that has normal people in it. Like it always feels kind of broken. Rise of the Resistance very much doesn't, and Guardians very much doesn't, right? Guardians, it actually feels like it's part of that universe in a real cohesive way that they really hadn't been able to do before. So I was super
And
impressed.
Star Tours is very much a sore thumb now because it's not even in the Star Wars area.
Right.
It's like this extra little ride between before you get there, right?
Yeah, and it's with all the advancements they've made in like ride presence, ride feel, and engagement. It feels real herky jerky. It just feels incredibly dated, even though they've attempted to make some updates, and it's not the same. Like, you don't get the same ride visuals that you do. Like this,
Right.
you don't get the same program anymore. They've got 4 or 6 programs now for Star Tours.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. It still feels like it might as well be the same experience from when it was original.
So while we're there, as you know, my oldest is a cast member. She works at Hollywood Studios because she does Phantasmic. Let's hope that she can take us on a tour and show us all the fun, interesting facts we wouldn't have known had she not been a cast member.
That would be amazing. We probably need
That's
to
what I'm hoping.
plan that beforehand and not do that as the Sweet Spot meetup.
Difficult, yeah, definitely not a sweet spot. It's difficult to plan beforehand because it's based on her shifts, right? Like we don't really know
No, but
when she's working.
even 2 days, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So
This is a lot of ramp up.
Yeah,
I
this
mean,
is a lot of ramp up.
We're 11 minutes
Interestingly
in.
enough, yeah, interestingly enough, you guys keep talking about how all these rights keep improving. We saw a lot of improvement on the tech world, and AI is everywhere. The different things that happened this week. So how do we put all that together so when we look at our companies and our IT environments, that we can move forward? Like you were describing how Space Mountain, they had a vision, but probably because of the technology they had at hand, couldn't make it a reality until probably now. Companies sometimes have the same challenges. They had a vision, probably couldn't make it a reality, and now technology have changed. What do leaders do now?
So let's do a little preface first because I think if we give Howard a little bit of what it was like this week, you'll have a different answer. So I was just on the Cube just before this. We did a Cube interview. We came here when we're on the podcast, and one of the questions was, can you sort of summarize what's happened this week, and what do you think of GCP, Google Cloud now? And my answer was, the C's gone, right? It's now GAAP. There was nothing about the cloud really in any real sense in the keynote and most of the breakouts. It's 80% AI/Gen AI/ML. In fact, the 2 big announcements were changing the model garden to include not just the Google-centric LLMs, but 100 open source LLMs, the Metas, all the external ones, and you can tweak and tune and build Gen AI solutions from all of those possible models. That's the first one. And the second one, and with Vertex AI being sort of the tool set to do that. Second one is the sort of the consumer grade implementation, the Do It AI, so that workspace, notes, docs and sheets and chat all is enabled with that Gen AI technology to help you build content in sort of the consumer to consumer technology. And that's what the 2 big pro messages were, versus here's another GPU type, right? Here's another TPU implementation. Here's another database. Here's another migration tool. C was now not absent, but it was assumed, which I thought was an interesting change.
Yeah, but it's a good change, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's been the promise of cloud since the beginning is you didn't have to think about the cloud. It's a lie.
Right.
It's a complete lie, right? But the reality is that's what we need. That's where we're trying to go. And I say it's a lie because if you don't think about the cloud, the security implications are terrifying.
Right.
Right. Yes, Google has 100 times the security analysts. Amazon has 100 times the security analysts. Microsoft has 100 times the security analysts of any other organization, and therefore the cloud itself is secure, but your implementation of it is not.
Right.
Unless you make it so, and you have to think about that differently than how you would think about your own data center network, as an example. So the fact that the maturity of the cloud is to the point where they're really kind of doubling down on the application instead of doubling down on yet another hardware iteration, I think is good news. But we we as the consumers of it need to keep in mind that control layer is still going to be the foundation of success or failure within the cloud.
Mm.
Right.
It felt like a little bit, and not to put a negative spin on this, but it did feel like it, that there were so many examples of Gen AI implementations that it did really feel like they were
Like an
pushing
AI
you
show.
that it was a trend, right?
Yeah.
And I'm using the term now, anecdotes don't equal a trend,
Right.
right? It is still a relatively immature environment, right?
It's
And all
extremely-
the prerequisites you need to have in order to actually enable it in a real production sense still are there, right? It's not like all of a sudden I have all of my knowledge bases readily available to be used and tuned with an LLM. That just didn't occur. Right? Sure, I now have an ability to apply an LLM, but it doesn't mean I have any of the data available to make that happen, right? So,
Sure.
It feels like a potential over rotation.
Sure. Well, and one of the things we need to keep in mind is if you train an LLM on the entirety of the internet,
Yeah.
right, the corpus of data is so incredibly large that you have less of a data quality problem, not more of a data quality problem.
Mhm.
Right? If 80% of the data is good and you're talking about the entirety of the internet, that's a big 80%.
Right.
Even if only 40% is good, it's a big 40%. Right?
Right.
Versus if you're talking about your company's corpus of data, and the totality of your knowledge base could fit on a DVD, data quality becomes infinitely more important.
Right.
And I think it's something that we're missing, right? People are looking at it going, well, the internet's not correct and their quality is poor, and yet this is pretty good. Yeah. But the number of examples of good far outweigh the total corpus of data you have, good, bad, or indifferent, right? On any
I was asked recently for an analogy of this, and I said, well, imagine this. I could use the exact same model to do two things. Thing number one, uh, uh, attach an entire novel, and it'll give me 4-paragraph summary. And that exact same model, I could give a 4-paragraph summary in order to create a novel. And the first and the second model look nothing alike. That's the problem, right? Is that it is producing content that has a level of accuracy that is not 80%, right? It's not 70%, it's not 60%. And it's the same model doing it. That's kind of the problem set that we have here, right?
Well, another way to look at it is I can take every novel ever published, including encyclopedias and atlases and everything, ever published in a library, and every library that's ever existed, and feed that into an LLM.
Yeah.
Right? And I can ask that LLM to write me a novel. I'm going to get one level of quality versus if I take everything your company has ever written, ever, and ask it to write a novel. Forget about the topical differences. The quality difference is going to be massive.
Right.
Right? Because the likelihood that good grammar was used, all an LLM is a predictive model on what word follows what word based on a prompt. Right? That's all it is. So if all I do is use things that at least made it through an editor and a copywriter and spell check, right, to meet the minimum requirements necessary for a publisher to actually spend the money to publish it, and tell that to write a novel, the likelihood that it's going to use proper tense, proper case, proper verb and noun usage is going to be infinitely higher than if I use every email your company's ever written.
Right.
Right. The quality of the input is going to be that much higher. And we do need to keep that in mind. And we do need to think about that. Right. And then we also need to think about the fact that LLMs still can't say no.
Exactly.
Right. They can't say no. I apologize. They can say no. You can put ethical restrictions in so that the response is no, we don't talk about that topic. What you can't do is have it say, I don't know.
Right.
Right. So
it's
how do you
going to answer you.
Correct. It will give you an answer, and it may not be the answer you necessarily want.
Right.
Right.
So does that mean
they're focusing on layer 7 a little bit more? I'm discouraged that they're so focused on AI within that layer 7.
So to make this better, you've got sort of 3 front issue, right? So front issue number 1, improve the quality of the data that's trained and data that you use to produce a result. That number 2 is, how do I ensure I have the appropriate level of algorithmic and mathematical expertise to tune LLMs? And then third, what kind of new skill set do I need, psychology and sociology, to do the prompt engineering part, to
I think
ask better questions?
I think the first and third is the most important. I don't actually think the second is nearly as important.
No, the tuning of actual algorithms.
Yeah, I honestly, and I'm like, I'm not even being sarcastic. I don't think that that's as important for most organizations. Again, right? We're not striving for perfection, and so I don't think number two is the place that I would spend all your time. I mean, find a consultant, right? You're going to have consultants that are going to be investing their time there, and you're not going to constantly be tuning, right? It's kind of like,
Right.
I need to get it to the point where it's good enough, and then prompts are going to be 75% of my problem, data quality the other 25 or 20, and then 5% the tuning.
Right.
Right. So until the point where you're like, well, our data quality's spectacular, our data quality is as good as it needs to be, and LLMs have a lower barrier for entry for data quality requirements. I don't want to make it seem like it has to be a pristine, crystal clear lake that you can see all the way to the bottom of. Like, it can still be a little murky. You just don't want your data to look like a freaking swamp. It's really, can you get your organization to a level where prompt engineering starts to become the language that you speak, right?
So they don't have skill sets. That role, that person, that expertise doesn't exist in a corporation yet, does it?
No, it does not. It does not. But to get, again, right, we're not aiming for 100%. So not everybody needs to be an actual prompt engineer, right? But to get to the point where when you speak to an AI, you speak in a way that's going to give you the result that you want, we could get there. Right. And then to understand when you don't get the result that you expected, what to do about it. Right. I mean, the challenge ultimately is we've created the world's greatest tool for learning. And yet we have spent decades not teaching people how to learn. Right? We teach people rote.
That's an interesting point.
People how to learn. Right? We don't teach critical thinking. We teach rote. Right? And so we kind of have to start to break that. We kind of have to start to say, hey, look, unlike all of your life where you've been able to just accept what you're given, you are now required to question. Right? And that's going to be the difference, right? If you just accept, well, then actually I don't need you anymore, because the AI, if all you're doing is accepting the result from the AI and feeding that result, then I can actually remove you from the equation completely. Right? It's the ability to be critical that ensures you'll have a place in an AI-driven future.
Are there any types of people today that fear Gen AI the most? Like, is it screenwriters? Is it
any kind of writer or any kind
artists? Yeah.
Right. And I think that's poorly placed. Right. Again, when you ask Gen AI to write something, it writes to the mean. What is the most likely word that follows this word based on the prompt? So it follows the mean. If you read a script written by Gen AI, it's pretty awful.
Right. But can't you prompt it to in the style of these other authors?
Sure.
It doesn't start to create a different
but it's still awful. The prose changes, but the word that follows the word still ends up to the mean. Right. And so you don't get the brilliance of, shall I compare thee to a summer's rose? Right.
Or even less dramatic. Did I read somewhere that Stephen King trained, or he was using a model that was trained based on all of his content, and then when it produced a paragraph, he readily admitted that he would never write a paragraph that read like this.
Right.
So it's not really in his prose, because that's not how he would have written that.
Well, but again, what is the most likely word to follow the word before it?
Right.
And what's the license, right? Which means you by default remove every piece of inspiration from the writing. Right. So yes, right. If you look at King's a great example because he's so prolific. Right? He never stops writing. But read one of his books. If you turn 5 pages and don't go, wow, at least once, you're reading the AI version of Stephen King. Right? Not just that his prose is good, it's the way he puts the words together spark an emotion in you once every 5 pages, which means the AI is going to never write that, because it's unlikely for that to be written, because it's only written once every 5 pages. Again, I realize there's a whole lot more to it than that. Like, it doesn't go straight for the mean, but that's effectively what you get. And to be honest, that's really what we want. The fact that AI can write these things should not be our biggest concern.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
that's why I really push back when somebody defines Gen AI as artificial intelligence that create things, text, music, things. It's the create that I push back on. To say, is it real? Like, create is a really important word in our society, and I don't think it is creating in the sense that the humans would define it.
No. Okay. So this may not be perfect, and I may end up getting some hate mail for this. However,
you mean more hate mail?
Yeah. More hate mail. However, look at early hip hop and remove the vocal track, because it was all sampling, right? There's no musician that was in hip hop. That's AI. Okay. None of early hip hop was the music track created. It was assembled. I sampled this, I sampled this, I sampled this, I put them together. It was a unique and interesting way, right? And I don't want to take anything away. I love that era of music. It was super dynamic. It's super interesting. It was incredibly new, but it was the vocal track laid over it that was actually the creation.
Right.
That was what was actually new, right? Using someone else's beats and speeding them up and slowing them down and mixing them, while an absolute unequivocal skill, was not creation, it was assembly. That's what AI can do. AI can do that assembly. Creation, yeah, I have a bit of a problem with it, right?
Yeah, and to the naked eye, an AI created image feels like create, when it in fact is assembly.
Correct. It's assembly and it's imitation.
Yeah.
Right.
And not coincidentally with your analogy there, the musical guest last night was LL Cool J and the Roots.
Nice. I'm a big fan of the Roots.
Yeah.
They're a pretty awesome and impressive musical group when you see them outside of late night. Even in late night, they're pretty good.
And to call back to Universal Studios, just because it's a callback episode, have you been on the Jimmy Fallon ride with the Roots at Universal Studios?
Yeah.
See, it's a full circle pod today.
Of course I have. I had it, and I'm like, oh, it's Jimmy Fallon, but the Roots. All right, let's go. I also did the Fast and Furious ride, which I do not recommend.
Oh, nice. The Mummy ride at Universal is still my favorite by far.
The Mummy ride is still fantastic. Yeah. I went recently with my daughter. She was 21 at the time. She's 22 now, but it wasn't that long ago. And we bought I messed up and didn't get the VIP. I highly recommend anyone going to Universal really try to get the VIP pass. Book early. The price is dynamic. It increases and sells out. Book early, and the price is actually okay. But it gives you unlimited front of the line pass. Right. So and that was fantastic. The only thing that saved us, I bought the unlimited front of line pass, which works for everything except Super Mario Land.
Oh, nice.
Now
that's like a virtual queue type process.
No, you literally just walk to the front of the line. Like, they have a separate line that you just
I see.
Like it's like the old Fast Pass.
Got it.
But you don't register for anything. You just literally walk down that line, and it's 1/10. I don't think any line was 10 minutes.
Wow.
I don't think any line was 10 minutes, except Mario. So we went to Super Mario Land, and because I'm handicapped and I walk with a cane and I got my little handicap pass, you go to the Super Mario line and you give them your little card, and they stamp it and they write down what time you showed up, and then they just add whatever the number is. So if it's a 2-hour wait, they just add 2 hours, and then it's back. You come back at that time and you go front of the line.
Sweet.
And that was amazing. The ride is a tremendous amount of fun and frustration, because it's also a ride in a game. So you have a little light gun that you shoot stuff.
So like Toy Story ride?
Yeah, it's like Toy Story ride. Yeah. It's in some ways better. Right? Like, they've combined it with like a Mario Kart thing. It's really cool. It's really fun. It is incredibly tiny. Like, Mario Land has 2 rides, one kid ride and then Mario Kart. But it's a ton of fun. I have to recommend the front of line pass, though. It made an enormous difference.
But it's expensive.
Does
it double the price of the day?
No, it was less than double.
Okay.
Right, it's like 50% more. which I actually felt was worth it. Like I get that this stuff is expensive, and I don't ever want to be cavalier about the cost of things,
Yeah.
because everyone's situation is different. But if you look at how much you spend to do a Disney vacation or a Universal vacation, removing the line is worth the money.
It dramatically changes how you're going to feel
Dramatic-
at the end of the trip. Yeah.
dramatically. And I'm with you. Yes, the
experience.
Mummy is the best ride. We rode the Mummy, got off, rode the Mummy again, got off, rode the Mummy again. And we
Exactly.
did that because it was front of the line pass. So we just we did the unlimited. We just literally got off and just ran in a circle until we were just done. And you no longer had to plan, what are we going to ride on this trip? We rode everything to the level we wanted to ride, and left while it was still dark, and we're exhausted. We had just ridden everything so much, we were completely wiped out.
And just for the audience, it's the Brendan Fraser Mummy, not the
That is correct.
Tom Cruise Mummy.
It is the Mummy, not that other thing that never happened.
I don't want people. All right, so way back to the origin story here. So half of the message we heard this week was the Gen AI angles I just talked about. The other half was we're moving away from a product-centric approach go to market, right? So it's no longer Cloud SQL and GPUs and TPUs and BigQuery and all these things. It's how do we help or provide assets end to end? How do we do it order to cache, and that we provide the looker block, the semantic machine learning, the actual schema in BigQuery, and even an XML integration to a core system.
Sure.
And those are free, right? Those are GitHub, GitLab, download them, an hour, good to go, you're there. And that's the go-to-market. And yes, you'll use and consume those services, but that's secondary to the conversation versus primary to the conversation.
Sure. But again, right, that's kind of the evolution of the cloud. Like if you think about it, the cloud, the value to the cloud for the provider isn't just the bill, isn't just profitability on top of custom command frameworks and incredibly efficient data centers, right? The value is the data they get on the usage. And so if you think about it, right, and you go, okay, well, what are people actually doing? Well, they're assembling Legos to make their own structure. Right. But 6 out of 10 organizations have these 7 skyscrapers that they all create, and they all create them fundamentally the same. So if we just take and go, here's your 7 skyscrapers, you're still going to decorate the interior. You're still going to split them up into the offices that you want, but fundamentally the skyscrapers are the same. Here's the 7 skyscrapers everyone deploys. Now all you have to do is decorate them. You no longer have to build a skyscraper. And before, what we provided was the concrete and the rebar and the steel and the construction crews. No. We're just going to deliver and drop in a skyscraper. And now all you really have to do is, light it and, turn on the lights and design the offices.
In the last 10 years, they haven't been helping you build the skyscraper. They've just given you more options of windows. Right? You now have 35 different options of windows to choose from. It's like, oh, geez.
Yeah. I mean, the last 10 years, what they've said is, here's every color of window tint, if we're being honest.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they're all windows.
And we've talked about this before, right? We talked about it when you went to an Amazon show or the Amazon Insider Ignite happened, and we talked about how like they just released 85 new CPU configurations.
Right.
And we're like, that who cares?
It's not helpful.
But this is actually the same conversation, but the other side of it. Because when they released the 85, I said, great, everybody uses 3. Right? You pick the ones that work for you, and that's it. Your catalog is 3 or 5. Right? So now what's happened is they've flipped that, and they've gone, well, we now know that everybody only used 5 of whatever the thing was. And so now you don't need to see the 85. They're still there if you really want them. But we've said, hey, here's the most common, most useful on-ramp, right? It's what did we used to call that? We used to have those, and everybody would build them.
No.
I mean, like everybody has them.
The templates?
Say it again.
Not the
No,
templates?
but it's like, hey, here's the 5 building blocks. We've already put it together before you. We've already connected the things. You put your data in. This thing comes out. Now we're gonna do the configuration.
Like solution accelerators?
Yeah, accelerators, right? We all
Oh,
had
accelerators.
accelerators.
Okay.
That's kind of
Accelerators.
what Google is now delivering. Is it's an accelerator.
Right.
Here's the
Right.
7 components necessary to go from this input to this outcome, and it's an accelerator because everybody kind of builds this.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not just the service; it's also the asset, right? The actual schema, the actual looker block, right?
Sure.
And yeah, it's not going to be perfect. Like, it's clearly not exactly the way you'd want to look at order to cash,
For sure.
but it's probably close, right?
For sure. But their goal isn't to be bespoke.
Right.
Right. The goal of most of the companies selling an accelerator is to add their bespoke services to the accelerator.
Right.
Whereas their business model is very different. It doesn't work if it has to be bespoke. If it has to be bespoke, it won't scale to the level that cloud requires.
Right.
Right. And so they're going to build the defaults in and just go, here's the defaults. Whatever else you need, you can go do. Go with God, my son.
Carlos, did you see any observations on your side? Like, you probably saw more of the deeper technical sessions.
Yeah, it was just interesting how, like you mentioned, the way of to leverage what is already there. And a lot of people were excited about all these open source new models that are coming. And I was thinking, if you don't have the correct piping to feed the data to those models, there's nothing that I can do with it. So we go to something that we have talked about before, that is a garbage in, garbage out. And I think that a lot of people are looking at niche solutions to try to fix a problem, but they still don't go to the root. That is,
yeah, it's an interesting observation because there were 2 big showcases with Vertex AI, right? So showcase number 1, I went from a dozen Google LLMs to 100 Google and open source LLMs. That was the first side. Let's celebrate that fact. But the other one I thought was way more interesting comparatively, which was we've now added out of the box source connectors to ServiceNow, to Jira, to Confluence. I'm like, well, that's valuable. Yeah, I don't need 80 more models. I need actual connections to my actual knowledge bases in my actual enterprise. That's because now I don't have to worry about how to get there. You're helping me get there. Do more of those. That would be valuable.
It's not even that I have to worry about how to get there. It's I don't even have to worry about what to connect. You're telling me what to connect, and I just go, have it, don't have it, have it, have it, don't have it, don't have it, don't have it. All right, cool. We're working.
Right, exactly. Right. You just click through them all if I had them all. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that and I think they undersold the connections and oversold the models,
sure.
Which I thought was model guard, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you said they have 100, I'm like, okay, because I would expect it. I'm not buying Google. I'm buying a cloud that happens to be Google, and therefore the interoperability was supposed to be the purpose to begin with.
Right.
I don't get to just use the Google database service. I get to use the Google database service and all the other ones. So why would I not be able to use all the other LLMs?
Right.
Right. So I wasn't surprised by it. I just kind of went, yeah, they're a cloud provider. I should be able to use more than the Google, right? But the integration,
you're seen as a check mark, not an innovation.
Correct. No, that was just a required evolution of the service that was provided, right? Like we're going to start with Bard, but eventually we'll have the other ones. Okay, cool. So it's eventually today.
Right. Exactly.
It's eventually today. It's eventually today. I absolutely expect that. The integrations, that's much more interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right. And it actually goes back to something that we've also kind of always talked about, and that is these vendors don't really understand how and why customers buy, because they always seem to highlight the wrong thing. Right? Like, let's highlight the fact that we support everything that you're going to want to run. We've done that with every other thing we've ever brought on, and not highlight the fact that we've made it much easier to connect the things that logically need to connect to it. Right? Like I get it, but your face, you're showing me the back of the card. I need to see the face of the card if this trick is going to work.
All right, Carlos, this has been at least 23 minutes of valuable content.
I agree. It's been at least valuable content.
23 minutes, and the other 15 are for Disney, so we can get people.
The 23 minutes of valuable was Disney and Universal. That's my
That's the title of the pod. 23 minutes of valuable content. Runtime 39 minutes.
Yeah, 23 minutes of valuable content and 16 minutes on AI.
So, my friends, that's been awesome that you are here with us again. Like we say always, take the time, take your notes. There's a lot of golden nuggets that you can derive from this session. So, take the time, take notes, share with others. Make sure that you subscribe, and we'll see you in our next episode.